The skies over Doha lit up with fire. Israel's war crossing into Qatar. An emergency summit condemned the strike, but unity fractured. Netanyahu vowed to hunt Hamas leaders anywhere in the world. Trump claimed he was blindsided. Israelis say he knew. Now, alliances are straining, and the Middle East stands on edge. An emergency summit of Arab and Islamic leaders convened in Doha has condemned Israel's strike on Hamas officials in the Qatari capital, but the meeting ended without binding measures. The gathering, led by Qatari Emir Sheikh Tamim bin Hamad Al Thani, denounced what he described as a blatant and treacherous attack on a residence housing Hamas families and negotiators. He argued that the bombing showed Israel's lack of genuine interest in peace and its intent to obstruct ceasefire efforts in Gaza, where more than 64,000 Palestinians have been killed since the war began.
My country's capital, Doha, where this summit is being held, has been subjected to a treacherous attack targeting one of the residences housing families of Hamas's political leadership and its negotiating delegation in a residential neighborhood that includes schools and diplomatic missions. If Israel wants to assassinate Hamas's political leadership, why is it negotiating with them? And if it wants to negotiate for the release of hostages, why is it assassinating everyone with whom it could negotiate? And how are we supposed to receive in our country Israeli delegations for negotiations, while those who sent these delegations are planning to bomb this country? These questions don't expect answers, but rather explain why we say openly that this aggression is truly vile, treacherous, and cowardly. And it's impossible to deal with this level of malice and betrayal.
The Gulf Cooperation Council issued the most concrete outcome, pledging to activate a joint defense mechanism. Qatar's Foreign Ministry spokesperson, Majid Mohammed Al-Ansari, said consultations among military bodies were underway, with a high-level meeting in Doha to follow. He emphasized that the GCC stood in one line on regional security.
The joint statement obviously called for a meeting of the High Command to be held here in Doha to discuss further steps to ensure that the safety and the joint security of the GCC countries is addressed. The GCC stands in one line.
Beyond that, the summit delivered largely symbolic unity. Malaysian Prime Minister Anwar Ibrahim urged leaders to move beyond statements, warning that condemnations would not stop missiles and that only punitive actions could have an impact. Other leaders voiced similar frustrations. Turkey's President Recep Tayyip Erdogan called for economic pressure, while Egypt's President Abdel Fattah el-Sisi warned that Israel's strike violated international law and threatened existing peace agreements. Despite the rhetoric, states with ties to Israel refrained from announcing breaks in relations. Instead, the final communiqué reaffirmed solidarity with Qatar and support for its mediation efforts alongside Egypt and the United States. The Doha summit highlighted mounting anger at Israel's expanding campaign, but also the divisions that continue to blunt collective Arab and Islamic action. Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu has signaled that Hamas leaders will remain targets wherever they are, days after an airstrike in Qatar killed 6 people but missed its intended targets. Speaking alongside U.S. Secretary of State Marco Rubio in Jerusalem, Netanyahu defended the operation as Israel's independent decision, saying every state reserves the right to defend itself beyond its borders. The remarks followed US President Donald Trump's assurances to Qatar that such an attack would not be repeated on its territory. Rubio sought to ease concerns, stressing Washington's enduring ties with Gulf allies. even as the strike tested the balance between American commitments and Israeli actions. The two men highlighted cooperation in technology and security, with Netanyahu describing the US as Israel's strongest partner. The visit comes as Israel intensifies operations in Gaza City. Residents report being urged to flee south, though many say they lack the means or safety to do so. The United Nations has warned that escalating the offensive in an area already facing famine risks pushing civilians into a deeper catastrophe. Diplomatic fallout is also looming. At the upcoming UN General Assembly, several US allies, including the United Kingdom, France and Canada, are expected to recognize Palestine as a state. Within Israel, that prospect has sharpened divisions, with Netanyahu advancing settlement expansion and reiterating his opposition to Palestinian sovereignty. Rubio is continuing his regional tour with a stop in Qatar, as Washington attempts to manage tensions between two of its closest partners in the Middle East. Conflicting accounts have emerged over whether the United States was notified in advance of Israel's strike on Hamas leaders in Qatar. President Donald Trump has repeatedly said he learned of the attack only once missiles were already in the air. His press secretary reiterated that the US military informed him as the strike was unfolding, leaving no time to intervene. But several Israeli officials speaking to Axios said Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu had called Trump roughly an hour before the explosions in Doha. According to those accounts, Trump was briefed both at the political level and through military channels, and could have objected if he wished. The officials said Israel would have called off the operation had Trump opposed it. The White House has not addressed the timeline directly, and Netanyahu has continued to describe the assault as a unilateral Israeli decision. Israeli officials told reporters they were willing to align with Washington's public denials to preserve the bilateral relationship. The strike killed 5 Hamas members and a Qatari security officer, though the movement's senior leaders survived. It has strained relations with Qatar, which hosts a major US airbase and has been central to mediation efforts in Gaza. The episode underscores rising tension between Israel and its closest allies at a moment when the war in Gaza has killed tens of thousands and displaced the entire population. Rights experts describe the crisis as bordering on genocide, an accusation Israel rejects as it continues to frame its campaign as self-defense.